All right, Pops, conventional wisdom has always been that the better value is to buy a used car. However, in 2023, if you're thinking about buying a vehicle, you got to consider new ones as a better value. And no, I'm not just like shilling sales for car dealers. New cars, Pops, are actually a better value than used cars right now in most circumstances. We'll get into why in a few examples here. But I guess actually you pressure test me. Is that how you feel about this?
Yes. Pressure tested. Yes. And there's a number of factors for that. But if we are talking about 2 to 3 year old pre-owned cars, my suspicion is probably better off today looking at that comparable new car, because the 2 to 3 year old pre-owned cars haven't depreciated as much as they historically would have. And so they won't represent the value that they would have in the past.
Yeah, conventional wisdom has been, pre-pandemic wisdom was wait 2-3 years, especially on a luxury vehicle, things like that. The depreciation would be severe, and you could actually save a lot of money by purchasing a prior model year version. However, you look at the data now, Dad, and it would tell a different story. Why can we say this with any conviction? Well, the first input to this equation is the supply side. How many used cars are available versus how many new cars are available? And you've probably heard us talk about this in the past, and we'll say it again here. There is a used car shortage. There has been, and there will continue to be for years to come. That is a direct result of 18 or so million new cars not being produced over the past 2 years. It has led to a significant shortage of used vehicles. Dad, there are 400,000 less used cars for sale right now than there were this time last year. And this time last year, there was a huge shortage of used cars. So the amount of used vehicle inventory is down significantly from where it has historically been. And at the same time, new car inventory has been building back stronger. Pops, we are super excited. CarEdge Insurance. What is it? What do we need to know?
It's all your insurance needs in one place. Easy, simple, fast. Just give us some information, you get your quotes.
CarEdge.com/insurance.
I'm not the brightest guy, but if there's 400,000 less used cars available today than there were last year when we had a shortage of used cars, then that would indicate to me that the shortage of used cars is more severe this year than it was last year. And as we all know, one of the tenets of economics is supply and demand. When you have limited supply, but a rather strong demand, that typically ends up inflating the values that people are willing to pay for that limited supply. And that's exactly where we are with pre-owned cars at the moment. The demand is still there. The supply is less than it has been, which means that even though on the wholesale side of things, at the auctions, we are seeing values decline slightly, we have not seen commensurate drops in retail asking prices. And that's not to say that we haven't seen some minor drops in retail asking prices, but they are truly minor in comparison. And so with that shortage, people are still overpaying for the higher quality 2 to 3 year old pre-owned cars.
Which, if you are someone who's looking to transition out of a vehicle you purchased 2 to 3 years ago, CarEdge.com/sell. Go sell the dang on thing. It's worth a lot more, and it will continue to be worth a lot more because there is a shortage of quality used vehicles. It also happens at the other end of the spectrum, not just 2 to 3 year old used vehicles, but the low price point, the price attainable used cars out there, reliable, price attainable, sub 20,000. Those are also still highly valuable. All right, so let's talk a little bit, Dad, then why new? Well, new vehicle inventory is up 71% from last year. Let's put it in absolute terms. 790, for simplicity, or I'm going to call it 800,000, even though I'm giving myself 10,000 here. There's 800,000 more new vehicles in inventory right now than there was last year. So we just said,
yes,
there's 400,000 less used cars in inventory right now than there was last year. And there's 800,000 more new vehicles in inventory right now as compared to last year. Obviously, the supply situations are two totally different stories. We've also been covering the affordability crisis, so we know a lot of them are overpriced.
Yes.
MSRPs have gone up like crazy. But when you start comparing some of those inflated used car asking prices to these inflated MSRPs, and then you realize you can actually negotiate on new cars again, it's kind of logical why new vehicle is a better value, especially when you factor in warranty and things like that.
It is still supply and demand. Now, right now, the demand isn't quite as strong on new cars as it has been, and supply has gone up. Well, we are starting to see manufacturers offering more and more incentives to their customers to get them to buy cars. It might be a interest rate incentive. It could be a customer rebate incentive. Dealers are incentivized to sell cars more quickly because the cost of financing their inventory that is sitting on the ground, and they do finance that inventory, the cost of that has gone up because the Fed has continually raised the Fed rate several times over the past 2 years. It's at the highest level it's been at in what, 15 years or so, or close to 20 years?
Long time.
So dealerships are more motivated to offer you a better deal than they had been because suddenly the supply has gone up and the demand has gone down a little bit. So if you can find a comparably equipped new car to that really overpriced 2 to 3 year old used car, considering the fact that there'd be 0 miles on it and a full warranty on that new car, if you have to spend several $1,000s more to get the new one, and if you can afford to spend that several thousand, that's the key. If you can afford to do that, that would end up being a better value for you than that pre-owned car, because at a certain point, things will normalize. And when that happens, well, then used cars will once again depreciate like they used to. You know, the first year of ownership on a new car, the rule of thumb was when you drove it off the dealer's lot, it depreciated 20%. So that hasn't been happening. That will happen again. So all these people that have bought these pre-owned cars at inflated prices, when that starts to normalize again, those values will drop quickly, much more so than it will be on that new car with no miles that you bought in lieu of that used car that was way overvalued.
All right, now obviously there are some generalities here. We're not going to get into all the specifics for all the different types of vehicles or makes or models. However, we will pull up the brand inventory on the screen, and so you can press the little pause button. Press pause right there, and you get to see the brand inventory. So, you know, Toyota, Kia, the automakers that have the least amount of inventory, those are going to be the ones that are most difficult to negotiate on. Could be opportunities where used looks like a better value, but still. On the other end, Jaguar, Buick, Jeep, etc. Those are the ones where the new vehicles are going to be the most negotiable. We'll pull up on the screen the segment inventory as well. Same story here. Press pause. Vehicles on the left side of this are going to be harder to negotiate on the new car side. Vehicles on the right of this are going to be easier. You know, we're not going to get into every single nook and cranny of this in this one video, but generally speaking, new is the better value than used right now and will be for the foreseeable future. We have a guide back on CarEdge.com. Check out the link in the description down below. It's important people understand this, Deb, because it is a change in how we think. We've been raised on and taught that if you want the better value, you go used. And we are, to be very clear, we're not advocating for paying MSRP on inflated MSRPs. No, we're saying that if you really understand your market conditions and you find a new vehicle and you compare it to the used options and you can negotiate, you can get the warranty, get the factory incentive for financing, you can't just go buy the new car and say, oh, I listened to Ray and Zach, I got a new car at MSRP and didn't negotiate it all and it's a better value than used. No, you got to do the work here, folks. But if you do the work, new cars are a better value than used, and that is a new way of thinking.
In many, many cases, that is true. Many of the new cars will be better values. If you're looking at a Toyota, a Honda, Kia, Hyundai, that's not going to be the case because they are in short supply. But there are any number of brands that have sizable inventories and they are dealing. And so those vehicles could, as new cars, be a better value for you than the comparable overpriced pre-owned.